Straight ahead, Kamala's key moment. The vice president goes to the top of the ticket for Democrats. Her campaign message coming into focus during a stop in Texas. Republicans respond, and with a new opponent, Republicans are sharpening their message to persuade voters. I talked to one Texas Republican and how he thinks the GOP should go after Harris. Big business. I go one-on-one with Arlington Mayor Jim Ross about the city's growth and the connection to the city's entertainment district. Good morning, I'm Jack Fink. Get your fix for Texas politics. Eye on Politics starts now. Hello and welcome on this Sunday. Another historic week in what has become one of the most politically turbulent months in a presidential election. And a key moment in the race for the White House, the fallout from President Biden's decision not to seek re-election. He threw his support to Vice President Kamala Harris. The vice president campaigned in Houston Thursday, her second trip to Texas this month. She spoke before the American Federation of Teachers. Harris thanked the members for being the first union to endorse her presidential campaign. She acknowledged the work of educators as she laid out some of the issues expected to come up ahead of the election in November.
And while you teach students about our nation's past, these extremists attack the freedom to learn and acknowledge our nation's true and full history, including book bans. Book bans in this year of our Lord 2024. And on these last two issues, just think about it. So we want to ban assault weapons, and they want to ban books. Can you imagine?
As for President Biden, he explained why he decided to step aside in a primetime speech from the Oval Office. He said it was time to pass the torch to a new generation.
You know, there is a time and a place for long years of experience in public life. But there's also a time and a place for new voices, fresh voices, yes, younger voices. And that time and place is now. Over the next 6 months, I'll be focused on doing my job as president. That means I'll continue to lower costs for hardworking families, grow our economy. I'll keep defending our personal freedoms and our civil rights, from the right to vote to the right to choose.
President Biden will be in Austin tomorrow at the LBJ Presidential Library. He'll deliver the keynote for the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act. I'll be there to report on the event. After President Biden's decision, Democrats followed his lead and backed the vice president for becoming the party's nominee. On a Zoom call last Monday, local Democrats, from Dallas County Judge Clay Lewis Jenkins to a host of state representatives and senators, announced their support for the vice president. Jenkins cited Harris's experience as a local, state, and federally elected official. On Friday, the Harris campaign released a video announcing that former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle officially endorsed Harris. The Obamas said they look forward to campaigning for Harris. And with Kamala Harris, the likely nominee for Democrats, the attention turned to who she would choose for her running mate. Multiple sources tell CBS News as many as 11 people are being vetted. That includes a number of Democratic Party governors, Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, Roy Cooper of North Carolina, Andy Beshear of Kentucky, Tim Walz of Minnesota, J.B. Pritzker of Illinois, and Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan. There are also members of the Biden administration under consideration, Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo and Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Also, Arizona Senator Mark Kelly. An announcement will likely come before the Democrats' national convention in Chicago starting August 19th. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett of Dallas had backed President Biden staying in the race and campaigned for him along with Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff 9 days ago. I asked Crockett how she reacted when she first heard the president said he would not run again.
I was heartbroken. I actually was out with the second gentleman. We were in Phoenix, Arizona, campaigning. We were opening yet another office in Arizona to make sure that we could secure the win. and the crowd was pumped up. I dealt with the things that most people had to say about the president, which is that he's old. I always took on kind of those negatives and turned them into positives and encouraged people to support the president because he had done such great work and he was ready to finish the job. And so when it happened on Sunday, which was just 2 days later, I was a bit crushed. And I was crushed for a couple of reasons. Number one, because I know this president, I know his heart, and I know his record. I also was crushed because of how it took place. It just felt as if there was this circular firing squad, and it was all coming from within our own party. It really made me question, like, who are we as Democrats, right? But at the same time, as soon as kind of we started to kind of, lick our wounds, here it was that he then went a step further and endorsed our vice president, which also in that interim, I had a bit of angst because there were those that behind closed doors said that they basically didn't want the entire ticket. They didn't want the president, they didn't want the vice president. And so I knew that the next fight was about to take place, which was to make sure that the vice president became the nominee. And right now, I can say confidently that she is the presumptive nominee. And I'm so happy. So when I say roller coaster, I mean it. I've got the highs and I've had the lows, but I am ready to go.
And so let me ask you, why do you think President Biden stepped aside then? I mean, because you said you weren't happy with the circular firing squad. So what do you think was the real reason he dropped out?
I think it was the circular firing squad. I think it was this idea that our party was divided. And President Biden is a good man. If it was Trump, this never would have happened, just FYI. I mean, they tried to get him to step aside when his tape came out, that Hollywood Access tape. But this is somebody that will always put country first. And so it was the division. And I think that he potentially would have arrived at the same decision if people had gone to him privately and been respectful and talked about their fears, talked about their concerns, talked about why they felt like he should step aside, because ultimately he would want our party to be unified. I didn't think that it made sense that they were out front. They were saying things that were very discouraging about the president. And now it was only playing into the hands of the Republicans. And so I do think he still potentially would have came to the same conclusion. I just don't really like the tactics that were used.
Was there any indication 2 days ago from the second gentleman that this was actually going to happen?
Absolutely not. There wasn't.
Why do you think Vice President Harris is the best person for being the presidential nominee for Democrats right now?
Yeah, so there's a strategic component of it, and then there's just a straight up qualification component of it. Strategically, there was only one person that could inherit all the money that was already sitting there that had been raised. There's only one person that could inherit the infrastructure, all of the offices that have been opened. I want to say, I don't know. I've been in so many states that I can't remember who has what. I think Pennsylvania, the last time I was there, has 18 offices. I think Arizona has maybe 13 offices or something like that. We've got a ton of offices down in Georgia. So there's only one person that could inherit all of this. So from a strategic standpoint, strategically, it made absolute sense. Also, when you look at the excitement that she has garnered, the word of the week has been hopeful. That is the word that I've heard used more than any other word. And so we're talking about an energy that we've not seen.
And who do you like for her vice president?
I trust her. I've had more than one opportunity to sit down and have very frank conversations with the vice president over dinner, and I trust her. I think that Senator Kelly probably has a bit of a leg up because he currently serves in the Senate. That means that he already has relationships with those senators as he looks to potentially become the person that presides over the Senate. So I think that probably will give him a little bit of a head start. And obviously, because he currently serves in the Senate, this is somebody that she currently works with. But I don't know anything about the relationship that she has with some of these governors and whether or not, they will make better sense.
You mentioned Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee and her passing, and I'm wondering, what do you think her legacy will be? And did she give you advice that sticks with you today?
She will definitely be known as a fighter. That's the first word that everyone usually uses when they talk about Sheila Jackson Lee. And then they start to go on about how she was a tireless worker. As it relates to advice, one of the things that Sheila Jackson Lee always told me was to be myself. And as I have served in a little bit of a different way than I think most people are used to seeing members of Congress serve, I must say that it meant the world to me to have someone who basically said, stand in your power and stand in your confidence, because that is what your constituents voted for.
So with a new opponent, how are Republicans responding? From former President Donald Trump to a respected Texas Republican, some of the potential strategies as the campaign's race to November, when Eye on Politics returns. Welcome back to Eye on Politics. Republicans are refining their game plan now that Kamala Harris has become the likely presidential nominee for Democrats. On Wednesday in Charlotte, North Carolina, Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump held his first public campaign rally since President Biden dropped his re-election bid, and he wasted no time criticizing Harris.
She is a radical left lunatic who will destroy our country. If she ever gets the chance to get into office, we're not going to let that happen. You know, I was supposed to be nice. They say something happened to me when I got shot. I became nice. And when you're dealing with these people, they're very dangerous people. When you're dealing with them, you can't be too nice. You really can't be. So if you don't mind, I'm not going to be nice. Is that okay?
And Trump's vice presidential nominee, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, went after the vice president and her record on the southern border crisis.
Kamala Harris is America's border czar. And how's our border doing, ladies and gentlemen? She hasn't talked to the chief of Border Patrol a single time in her entire tenure as border czar. Remember, on her very first day in office, she and Biden suspended deportations. They stopped construction of the border wall, and they re-implemented catch and release. The border crisis is a Kamala Harris crisis.
And let's take a minute now and dive into what's happening with illegal immigration at the southern border. Sarah Jenkins has this week's brief.
July is expected to have the lowest level of illegal immigration at the U.S.-Mexico border since the fall of 2020. That's according to Internal Department of Homeland Security data obtained by CBS News. Early in June, President Biden suspended the entry of the majority of migrants entering the country illegally. This effectively closed off access to the American asylum system for those not using authorized ports of entry. This is a big change from late last year when illegal crossings rose to 250,000 in December, an all-time monthly high. If illegal immigration numbers continue to drop, officials would have to lift the partial ban on asylum claims enacted by the president. A senior U.S. Customs and Border Protection official told CBS News the agency does not expect the partial ban on asylum requests to be lifted, noting that illegal crossings appear to be plateauing. But the official said that reaching the 1,500 trigger number to lift the partial ban is possible, and confirmed there has been internal planning and preparations. And both the U.S. and Mexico are watching a new caravan of hundreds of migrants that left Mexico's southern border to the U.S. border earlier this month.
We've heard about some of the issues that Republicans will raise, but how should they campaign against Harris? I asked Republican Michael Williams, who's a former Texas Railroad Commissioner and Texas Education Agency Commissioner.
All campaigns are about two main issues. One's record of achievement and their vision for an American future. And the best way, I think, to deal with the vice president is to go on her record, which is limited, poor, and weak, particularly on two major issues. It's poor, limited, and weak as it relates to the border and border security. It is the same as it relates to jobs and the economy. On the border, when President Trump left office, there were less than 500,000 illegal immigrants coming into this country. As recent as 2023, under the Biden administration, is 2.5 million. Tie the vice president at the hip to the president. That's sort of the first thing. And on the economy, there's no doubt that the pre-COVID economy of President Trump, there was prosperity, there were jobs. People were able to pay for the groceries and buy a home. That is not the case today. Tied to the president, and then beyond that, sort of prosecute her based upon her own record, her record when she was attorney general and district attorney in California. Do the same thing for her when she was running for president in 2020, and she supported defund the police. So there are a number of ways to attack the vice president.
What is your reaction to former President Trump selecting Senator J.D. Vance from Ohio as his vice presidential nominee? And do you think that, it would have been better to choose a woman given everything that's taken place in the Democratic Party?
Well, obviously, it's a whole lot easier to do this if you can look in the rearview mirror. But the President Trump didn't have the opportunity to do that. And so what he did was to look at what was the landscape at the moment where he made the decision, decided that right smack in the middle of the country in the Midwest, particularly Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, is where you're going to have to fight this thing out. And obviously, Senator Vance is from Ohio, and he can obviously play a large role, a significant role in carrying Ohio, as well as the surrounding states. And so in that sense, it was a tactical decision. I think a tactical decision that makes sense.
You have Vice President Harris saying, we're not going back. And you have former President Trump saying, we have to take our country back. So talk to me a little bit about those two campaign mantras.
I think obviously what Vice President Harris is talking about is sort of the regrade, if you will, of decisions made by the U.S. Supreme Court, whether it relates to abortion or whether it relates to sort of other areas. And so that's what she's referring to. When President Trump says that we need to take our country back, I think in large part he's talking about obviously protecting that border. He's talking about in terms of providing real prosperity to Americans through jobs and economic opportunity. Talking about in terms of protecting my Second Amendment right, which is to own and possess a weapon. And President Trump says, take America back. Talking about providing America with true energy security. And that means allowing, as he said in his speech at the convention, and borrowing the line from former Speaker Newt Gingrich, drill, baby, drill, because American producers can help us take America back by putting us in a position where we had true energy security by turning them loose.
Coming up, we're going to jump off the campaign trail for a little bit and talk about what's happening in Arlington. After the All-Star game, can Arlington win another Super Bowl? I go one-on-one with Arlington Mayor Jim Ross next on Eye on Politics. Now, one-on-one with Arlington Mayor Jim Ross. I asked him how Major League Baseball liked its All-Star game in the city and if Arlington can win back another Super Bowl.
I believe Arlington was received extraordinarily well. I was able to speak to the commissioner. We did a dedication of a Little League park here, a legacy park with the Rangers Foundation in the city of Arlington, and the commissioner was gracious enough to come over and help with the ribbon cutting of that. Everything seemed to go well. He was very happy with the All-Star game, fan experience. I had great reports from people coming by and seeing everything that was in Arlington to be experienced.
And so let me ask you, what lessons has the city or you learned from this experience? Because obviously in 2026, you've got World Cup coming and a lot of soccer matches there.
What we were looking at here is, can we move people in and out of our city and allow them the opportunity to enjoy the fan experience during the All-Star game in a safe, friendly environment? I think all those things were accomplished.
The Dallas Cowboys and the North Texas region, I would imagine, are still trying to get another Super Bowl back at AT&T Stadium. It's been a while. Last one didn't go so great as far as weather, as far as seating issues. And so I'm wondering, what is the main hurdle that you're hearing to winning another Super Bowl here?
I don't know that there's any big hurdle for us to get another Super Bowl here, and especially in light of the horribly bad weather that we had at the last one. I think that the NFL is going to move these Super Bowls around. They're going to give those fans experience to different places around the country. They have to make their rounds. Make no mistake, we are back in that rotation. We're going to be getting one back at some point in time. We don't have a date yet. We don't know which year we're going to be doing yet, but we're all working on that.
And a friendly reminder, all of our full interviews are on our website, cbsnewstexas.com. That's all for Eye on Politics this week. I'm Jack Fink. I am listening, and we are listening at CBS News Texas. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you again next week. And from all of us here, have a great Sunday.